Thank you for joining us on the Real World Podcast today. We have a very special guest on this Thor centric episode. It's Thor himself. Hello and welcome to the Real World Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to give us a like, hit the subscribe button, click the bell to get notifications on all our videos here at the Real World YouTube channel. Also, you can follow us on social media. All those links are in the description below. All of that helps us greatly. We really appreciate all of your support here at the Real World, trying to grow the channel so that we can put out more content for you movie fans out there. Today, I'm joined again by Bert. How you doing?
I'm great, Cam. How's it going?
I'm doing well. All right. So we are on episode 11 of the Real World Podcast. Today, we're talking all about Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We did this recently with Doctor Strange, and that episode is now on the channel if you want to check that out. Be sure you watch also something I watched over the weekend. If you enjoyed the new Doctor Strange movie, Marvel puts out this series called Assembled on Disney Plus, where it's basically an hour-long behind-the-scenes documentary on the making of the latest movie. They've also done it for their series. Nice. And so, yeah, if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. It's an hour-long look at the making of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. It was a lot of fun to watch. Really enjoyed it. So all you MCU fans, yeah, definitely need to check that out. All right. So today, like I said, we're covering Thor's journey throughout the MCU. This is a long journey we've taken with this character. He's been around pretty much since the beginning. 2011 is when his first film debuted, when he first graced the silver screen, and 8 films. He's been in 8 films overall now. And he's had probably the most complex character arc over the course of all these movies. He's gone through a lot of changes, and that has to do with, of course, the writers writing the character really well and taking him on this journey. The different directors that have stepped in, 3 different directors, just on the Thor films alone. Each one has had a different director. Plus, the Avengers movies, you have different directors there as well handling the character. But the constant, of course, is Chris Hemsworth, who's done a great job playing the character.
Yeah, and Cam, if I can mention something on that note, I think that Thor obviously came along before the first Avengers film, right, as did Iron Man, right? So I feel like those characters got treated a little bit differently than some of the characters that came after the fact. Like, for instance, Black Widow and Captain Marvel. I feel like Thor kind of got his own introductory full movie, whereas you get Black Widow, or I guess a better example is Captain Marvel. A lot of the movie has to do with the fallout. It's like a fallout kind of movie,
True.
And so I'm not saying that Thor 1 is a better movie. It's just a different style. And I feel like maybe there's a little better character development as a result of that, because you don't have all of the heaviness of what came after it invading his origin.
Right. Yeah, that is a great point. That is a great point. Yeah, he's had a lot more time to develop, like you said, before we even got to any Avengers, anything. And this world kind of expanded, this whole universe of characters expanded. He was there. So yeah, that's a great point you make. All right, so kicking things off with Thor, the first Thor movie released May 6, 2011, runtime of 1 hour and 54 minutes, had a budget of $150 million, ended up grossing $449 million. So this was a pretty decent hit for them. Early days Marvel here. Again, this is coming on the heels of Iron Man 1. We had Incredible Hulk, and we had Iron Man 2. And then this came out in 2011, just before Captain America, the First Avenger, was released later that year in July. So this movie, actually, I was reading into it. Sam Raimi was set to direct this movie way back in the 90s, before the MCU was even a thing.
Really?
Before he did his Spider-Man movies or anything, right after he did Darkman, he wanted to tackle Thor, and rights issues or whatever got in the way, development problems along the way, and that never ended up happening. But it's interesting that
a lot different, for sure.
It would have been very different, but it's cool that he ended up, of course, getting to do a Spider-Man trilogy, and now Doctor Strange, the sequel. So that's pretty neat that he got to eventually make his way into the MCU through another character. But this one ended up, they hired Kenneth Branagh to direct this movie. Kenneth Branagh is a guy I really admire. I like him a lot as an actor. I think he's very talented. He's got a long theater background and really good director too. He's known for his Shakespeare adaptations. He did a movie called As You Like It with Bryce Dallas Howard. He's done Henry V was one of his first movies he ever starred in and directed. And he's done various other films too. Disney's Cinderella remake, a bunch of movies. He's, I think, a really talented guy. And this is probably my favorite movie he's ever done. I've seen several of his films, and this one I think combines everything he's good at. It does have a very kind of Shakespearean feel to it with all the Asgard stuff, and I think he does really well with all of it. It's doing a lot. This movie, again, coming on the heels of the Iron Man films, it had to introduce the cosmic realm of the MCU, which is a really big challenge, I think, and doing it in a way that doesn't make it too silly or make it still fit in with what Marvel had established in that kind of tone. And I think that's important, and he does a really good job introducing all those sci-fi fantasy elements.
Let's face it, if this failed, Marvel didn't know it yet, but it possibly could have cost them billions and billions of dollars.
Absolutely.
Because if Thor fails, then is the next one going to be anticipated and lead to well, I guess the next one was Avengers, but if Thor was terrible, then people would probably not look as much forward to Avengers.
Absolutely. And especially, we'll talk about Avengers in a minute, but Thor plays a huge role in that movie, and Loki is the main villain. So
exactly,
you had to have this work in order to lead into that. But it also has to work on its own, which is important. And I think it really does. Going back and rewatching this one, I liked it even more on the rewatch. I liked it already. It was already among some of my favorites, but I actually bumped it into my top 10 of my MCU rankings on this rewatch because
really
it just really blew me away. The performances. Hemsworth is so good, totally throws himself into this role, totally believable as this arrogant prince who goes through this huge character arc of learning humility and learning, what it means to be worthy. And it just does a great job. The entire cast. I mean, you have Tom Hiddleston, of course, as Loki, who's become a fan favorite character, ends up, getting his own Disney Plus series. He really does a good job right out of the gate here, playing a very...
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Loki, obviously we're not focusing on him, but I mean, he's one of my favorite villains in film ever because we get a lot of time with him, so he's had a lot of time to establish that character and develop it. But he's so I don't know, he's just so good, plays both sides of the coins. He's got so many tricks up his sleeve. You're all the time guessing what he's going to do. But anyway, that's been a huge aid to these Thor movies. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, very much plays the god of mischief very well, and he's a sympathetic villain. That's what makes him great, is because he has a point of view. You understand where he's coming from. All the reveals that happen in this movie with his true parentage and that whole thing is really, really emotional and really well done. You have the supporting characters, the Warriors 3. They're a lot of fun. Lady Sif, Idris Elba as Heimdall. I think he's definitely underused here, but I think he has a good role. He's a great Anthony Hopkins as Odin, who is fantastic in all of his scenes, specifically the scene where he casts Thor out of Asgard. That is such a great scene that they play off each other, all three of the actors, really well.
Yeah, and I'll mention something on him if I can jump in there. That it took an actor that had a huge presence about him to be able to step into the scene and not be so much physically imposing, but just when he enters the scene, you realize, oh yeah, Thor is one step below Anthony Hopkins, who who's Odin. So you needed that kind of actor. I mean, that was smart casting as well.
I agree. Yeah, very smart casting to get an Academy Award winning actor who has a lot of gravitas. That's very important for that character. I'll mention as well, playing Frigga, Renee Russo. I think she is really good too. Again, a little underused here. Gets to shine a little more in the sequel, but she does a really good job here. The whole movie, you start with that little teaser scene where they run into Thor in the desert, the scientists Jane and Darcy and Selvig, And then you jump into this prologue sequence, which I think is really good, that opens up the movie, gives the history of the frost giants and the Asgardians, and why the Vikings worship these beings and that whole thing, which I thought was a really smart way to do that. And
Yeah, if I
then
can
just
jump in on that,
go ahead.
what you're talking about, that exact thing I was going to mention, because they smartly open up with something that's been familiar from Iron Man, which is it's grounded in reality. And
Yeah,
so there's not a lot of nonlinear activity in this
sure,
film, but the
sure.
way that they started out on Earth and then flashback to what happened leading up to that moment with Thor falling
Yeah,
is terrific. Yeah, it
it
works
is.
perfectly.
I agree. I agree. I really like that narrative choice. And then, once we do jump to Asgard, we see just the grandeur and the beauty of the design, just the way, these people designed Asgard's production design, these sets. I mean, they built some huge sets on this film.
Mm.
It's not all CGI.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really important. And the costumes are intricate and just
Hmm.
incredible to look at. Really
And
well
unique.
done. Yeah,
We've
they're
seen a
very
lot of
unique.
we've seen a lot of this kind of mythology or presentation and film.
Right.
So it's probably a bit difficult to make it unique.
Yeah,
But I feel like they accomplish that.
I agree. I agree. They definitely accomplish it. And it's an
And the
interesting
city
mix.
too, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if it's a miniature, but the city looks really amazing,
It
and
does.
the style of it, it's almost I want to say it's almost Wizard of Oz ish,
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
with
Emerald
sort of
City.
the
Yeah.
very jagged edges and the
Right.
tall, imposing look
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point. Yeah, it has that cool, again, they're kind of blending sci-fi fantasy. So it's got like an ancient feel, yet it's
yeah,
very sophisticated.
yeah. Right,
Um,
that's right. Yeah, it's a blend of both, and the
right.
tech too. Obviously, there's a lot of tech that would be for us, you know, new or science fictiony or
Sure.
whatnot. Another thing, along the lines of Wizard of Oz, while I'm thinking about it,
Uh-huh.
there is that road that leads to the city center, and
Yeah,
that could be
yeah.
a bit like the yellow brick road in
Right.
Wizard of Oz. I don't
That's
know
true.
if they borrowed anything from that or took cues from Wizard of Oz or not, but it just popped in my head. So
Yeah, yeah. Maybe the comic book writers did. From what I heard on the commentary, they were just looking at the comics. They didn't mention Wizard of
mm,
Oz, but the
yeah.
original, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee could have been inspired by Wizard of Oz.
How far
Absolutely.
back does that go? The comic, do you know?
The comic was originally written back in the 60s sometime.
Okay, okay,
So yeah, it would have
that's
been post.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And then, they have great juxtaposition with him now in New Mexico, right? So
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
desert landscape, very small town.
Yeah.
Um, they built that whole town out
Mm.
in the desert. They actually shot it in New Mexico, and it's just again a great juxtaposition. Earth and Asgard. You can tell where you
Yeah.
are at any point in the
Right.
movie.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's good. You're right. It's better that they did that instead of flashing to a big city, where there's
yeah,
also big buildings. I feel
right.
like it's pretty much the complete opposite kind of setting,
Yes, exactly. I
and probably
agree.
more
Yeah,
budget friendly.
definitely.
Even if they built the town, it's probably they probably spent most of their budget, I'm guessing, on Asgard, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, the New Mexico scenes I really enjoy as well. You have Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, I think does a really good job in that role. Believable as a scientist, as well as the great Stellan Skarsgård, who I really enjoy as Selvig, and then Kat Dennings, who's a great kind of comic relief character playing Darcy, and I really like their whole dynamic. They're believable as friends and colleagues, and it's that great fish out of water plot, right? Where
Hmm.
he doesn't know anything about Earth. He's really never been to Earth. He doesn't, love him slamming the coffee cup down. Another, just behaving as he would in Asgard as a prince. And,
Yeah, yeah.
he
Fish out
doesn't,
of water is always a go-to of
right.
Hollywood, and it's because
Yeah,
it can be serious, and also you get loads of comedy from it at the
definitely.
same time, and that's exactly what you get here. So
Absolutely. Yeah, they do a great job with that. And so, all in all, I just think it's a fun movie to watch. I just had a blast watching it again. They do set up some things MCU wise as far as the wider universe. Shield does show up. Agent Coulson shows up, but I don't think it's too heavy handed. I think they do a good job with it. We even get our introduction to Hawkeye here, which is fun. They do all that, it feels very natural to me. It doesn't feel, again, forced in or awkward or
Yeah.
anything. I like all that stuff. Mjolnir is kind of a character unto itself in a way. It's kind of the big MacGuffin of the whole thing. Lands in the desert. You have that great scene of all the locals trying to grab it, and then when Thor does finally reach it, he can't pull it out. It's kind of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Excalibur
Yep.
debacle again,
Definitely.
and
Yeah.
so has that kind of element to it. And then, but through his interactions with these human characters, he does learn what it means to be worthy, and learns
Hmm.
humility, ultimately sacrifice. The destroyer comes to the city, and he knows it's there for him, and he gives himself up, and
Hmm.
that's what ultimately resurrects him and brings him back, and so that he can have that battle with the destroyer, which doesn't last very long. But I'm glad they didn't spend too much time on that, because I much
Yeah.
prefer him going back to Asgard and having this fight with Loki.
Yeah.
This battle of these brothers who finally come to blows over what Loki has done and what he's doing. And
Right.
so Thor ultimately has to make another sacrifice, sacrificing his potential love,
Hmm.
Jane, destroying the Bifrost and saving his enemies, saving Jotunheim,
Hmm.
who he wanted to go to war with at the beginning of the movie, which is just great. It's a great full circle kind of
Yeah.
story. It really works so well. He ends up, of course, losing Loki as well. So he's gone through a lot in this one film. It's the inverse of most superhero movies. Most superhero movies is a human becoming superhuman. This is about a superhuman who has to become human,
That's true. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think is just really smart, and the way they do it.
And
I
he's
want
sent to
to
Earth. There could be some, biblical overtones of that. The father
absolutely
sends his well, technically his only son to Earth.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, definitely. So
But not for the same reasons as the Bible.
exactly. Right. Exactly. So, yeah, I wanted to mention briefly the whole look of the movie. Again, I mentioned the design of everything is really well done. Some people criticize Brana for using too many what's called Dutch angles. So, like, it's a little bit tilted
Mm,
sometimes when you're looking at things.
okay.
He did that because that's how he remembered the comic books looking. He actually read the comics when he was a kid, the
Mm,
Thor comics specifically. He did that because he felt that's how he remembered some of those comic panels looking. And I don't think it's overdone. I think
I
it's
don't think
actually,
it's overdone at all. I didn't actually pick up on that.
yeah.
Now I notice it all the time in the Avengers films, well, especially the first couple with Black Widow. And I'm
Okay, yeah.
assuming that's from the comics. I mean, they turn the camera literally about 45 degrees for some of
Right.
her sort of action shots when she's taking someone
Sure.
down. But I didn't
Yeah.
really notice anything that called too much attention to itself framing
Yeah.
wise in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's tastefully done, and it's well done. Patrick Doyle does the score.
It's
He's
pretty good.
great. It's such
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
theme, such a
Hmm.
good theme he
Yeah.
wrote for Thor. I really enjoy it. And so, yeah, it's overall a movie I thoroughly enjoyed. I've always enjoyed, but this most recent time with the commentary on it was with uh, Brana was the
Mm.
only commentator, and he just broke it all down. And he did not stop talking throughout the whole thing, and just gave so much insight into every choice that he made. And yeah, so ultimately, I ended up with 4.5 stars on this one. I
Mm.
really
Wow.
enjoy this movie, and I could watch it again and again. So, do you have a rating or anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I got a couple things. I'm not at 4.5 stars on this one. I think
Okay.
I'm more at 3.5.
Okay.
Again, for me, that's a pretty good movie. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess for
absolutely.
anybody it would be.
Sure.
We didn't talk about ranking these, but Thor might
Yeah.
be my least favorite Thor
Oh,
movie.
okay.
But it's overall very enjoyable, pretty much from start to finish. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's just that there's some heavy competition. You know what I
There
mean?
is, sure.
If you're comparing Avengers films with Thor, I mean, it's just tough
Yeah.
to. I mean, those are so big, those films.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I do really enjoy Thor. A few comments I wanted to say. A common theme in this film, and I guess throughout Marvel films, but
Hmm.
there's quite a bit of humor in Thor,
Yeah.
and I find that on his journey throughout these films, we get more and more and more comedy. Like every
It's
time you see
true.
him, almost there's more and more comedy,
Right.
and so I'll probably comment on that throughout. But that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I like Thor so much, is
Right.
because it is. sort of serious, but also just you're laughing throughout the movie.
Sure.
Thor walks into a pet store, which that alone sounds like a joke, but and he says, he just demands, I need a horse,
Right.
and the guy says, we just have cats, dogs, and birds, and he says, then give me one of those large enough to fly,
Right.
and only he can pull that off. Okay, I can't pull that off, that
Right.
joke, but those kind of things just make you laugh out loud because
Sure.
that's what he would say if he walked
Right.
into a pet store, so you believe it. And
Yes.
he's not necessarily making a joke, but
No.
it's that kind of humor that comes out of it.
Exactly.
That is throughout the movie and really throughout all the Thor, appearances. But
Yeah.
and then a couple things I wanted to mention. The Destroyer, that big creature or whatever he is.
Yeah.
Does he remind you at all of the X-Men Sentinels? I was kind of getting that kind of vibe.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison. Yeah. There's a little bit of that vibe to
They're
it.
in that same universe, and
Right.
just very scary. It's funny because they've got him sort of caged up right on Asgard,
Right.
and so the second I don't know if you, how do they get a hold of him? They yell his name or text him or something and tell him to attack, and he just comes out and just
right.
and by the way, that leads to another thing. The Destroyer on Asgard, he's protecting all of this room that has all of these things that
the vault. Yeah.
The vault, and it doesn't really seem like there's that much security unless someone calls out the Destroyer.
Right.
and they, of course, that they visit that room from time to time throughout the Thor film.
Yes, they do.
Whatnot,
Right.
which is really interesting. The ice creatures in this film, to me, I don't know what they're called. They're somewhat disposable.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit uninspired, I guess. The freezing effect is sort of cool.
Sure.
But everything else you said, I echo. The cast is fantastic. Idris Elba is so good, and I mean, honestly, I don't know if I'd say he steals the scenes, but you want more of him,
right?
And they were kind of lucky to have such a quality actor for what basically is kind of a small role throughout all of the Thor films.
Yeah.
A couple of silly things, I guess here. Odin's eye patch, is that glued on?
I don't know. I know. Well,
how does an eye patch stay on like that?
I don't know.
You use glue.
I don't know.
And
Magic.
you'd want to occasionally maybe give like a saline rinse or something into that area. I'm thinking. So I just never see him take it off and just kind of do one of these.
Right.
But that occurred to me, of course.
Yeah, it's Asgardian magic that keeps it up.
Right. It's a new fit or new style of patch.
Right.
And then the other thing is the hammer. What's the name you have for it again? Thor's hammer.
Mjolnir.
That's hard to remember.
It is.
But at one point it lands and they're trying to lift it, and so they actually dig out around it. And I got to thinking, sooner or later, if you dig deep enough, you could go under it, right? Yeah. So how far do you have to go down before you could lift up the patch of land that's holding his Mjolnir?
I don't know. Yeah. That's a good question. Could a crane lift it and move it somewhere? Maybe. I don't.
The land that's under, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It doesn't really matter to the plot, but those kind of things run through my head. I get more caught up in how does this work,
Right,
sort of thing. Like with the Destroyer, I'd kind of like to see more about where it came from and what it is. But some of these things we'll never get to see.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm probably a 3.5 stars on Thor. I haven't done a review yet, but we'll see where it lands. But I'm around there. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. So moving on now to the Avengers. This is his next appearance the very next year, May 4th, 2012. This movie was released. Runtime of 2 hours and 23 minutes. Budget of $220 million. Grossed $1.5 billion. Huge hit. Everyone went and saw this movie. This was the big buildup, the climax of phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Thor plays a major role here, going after his brother Loki, who is terrorizing Earth. And so we get that dynamic again, which is well done. I don't think it's quite as well done as it is in the first Thor movie, just because they don't have quite as much screen time, but it's still good. Hemsworth and Hiddleston are both excellent as always. One thing I picked up on, I don't like it as much, I think, as what they did in the first Thor. The dialogue is a lot more Old English. It's a lot more thous and wilts, and they're kind of even a little more Shakespearean in their speech. Which is a little odd, and I think they did that to play up the comedy and to play up his role among the Avengers, to set him apart more, which makes sense. He's got great moments with Iron Man. Their first meeting is a fight scene, which is really exciting. A lot of animosity with the Hulk as well. It gives him that little punch even at the end of the final battle, which is a funny moment. But
Yeah.
they play the team dynamic pretty well with Thor. I think he's got a pretty good role here. His relationships with all the characters are quite interesting. They kind of butt heads a lot, and then end up kind of putting those differences aside towards the end of the movie, and we get that awesome Battle of New York, which is a great sequence. This movie, I like it. I think it's one that unfortunately I kind of dislike more the more I watch it. Not maybe not dislike is the right word, but don't get quite as much entertainment out of it. Coming off of everything that we have now with
Hmm.
Infinity War and Endgame and all these big
Exactly.
movies that we've had, it's just kind of
Yeah.
gone down in my rankings over the years. But it's still, very fun. It was the first one to do it, which is a big deal. I enjoy it overall. What are your thoughts on the Avengers?
Yeah, you make some very good points, and I mentioned it before about Thor gets sort of his own movie before Avengers,
Right.
and I feel like he's definitely present. He's got some good lines, some good action,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot of moving the character forward in this film. And how
Sure.
can you really? I mean, there's so much else that they got to now give introduction to all new characters
Right.
and that. So
Yeah.
if anything, this may be out of the films the least amount of character development that we get on Thor, and
Yep.
that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you about Avengers though. I enjoy it still.
Yeah.
When it came out, obviously it was sort of the pinnacle of everything,
Right.
but fortunately, they've continued to move things forward, and yeah,
Yeah.
with an Infinity War especially. I mean, obviously I have it as like what I don't know, my third favorite film of all time.
Right.
I mean, I feel like it took what Avengers had, but just raised the stakes and
Yeah.
added so many more characters that you end up caring about, that it's definitely a couple steps above even Avengers. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
but yeah, as
agree.
far as Thor goes, he's fine in it.
Right.
That's about where it goes, I guess. I
Right.
don't know what else to say about it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. And something we didn't mention in the first one, which is kind of a running thing in the Thor movies, is Thor's hair. That's a big thing that fans talk about. And I like the hair length in the first one. I think it's good. The dyeing the eyebrows blonde maybe was a little too much,
Yeah.
but it was fine. He's an
Right.
alien comic book character. It's fine. I don't have a big deal with that. And this one,
Yeah.
his hair is maybe a little too long. I get
Yeah.
there. I
That.
think they're trying to show the passage of time,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a
Yeah. I think
little
it is a
much.
lot longer. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So, anyways, all right, we'll move along now. All right, so moving along to Thor: The Dark World. So this came out just a year after. So we got three Thor movies, one year after the other. It's pretty crazy. Hemsworth was a busy guy. This one was released November 8th, 2013, has a runtime of an hour and 52 minutes, budget of $170 million, grossed $644 million. So significantly more than the first Thor film. This, of course, coming on the heels of Avengers. Everyone wanted to see what he was going to do next. We got to see what happened with Loki and that whole thing. So people were excited about this one. This movie went through an interesting pre-production phase. Kenneth Branagh was not really interested in doing sequels. I don't think he's ever directed a
Oh.
sequel. I don't know if they asked him back or if bowed out. They hired Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins, coming off her Oscar win for Monster, who would later go on to direct Wonder Woman. She is a phenomenal director. She wanted to kind of do Romeo and Juliet in space. She kind of wanted to stick with the Shakespearean kind of feel and do a story about Jane Foster going to Asgard with Thor and them going on this adventure together. They didn't end up going through with that. I don't know all the details of what exactly she wanted to do with it. Like, did she want them both to die at the end and the whole like Romeo and Juliet thing or not? I don't know. I don't know what she wanted to do, but they ended up going a different direction. They got Alan Taylor to direct it, coming off of Game of Thrones. He's a director on that series, and this film has 6 writers, and I think that's usually a sign of trouble.
It can be. It can be.
It can be, and not always. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, not always, but it's
Yeah.
sign of usually that a team of writers was involved. Then there's a rewrite process going on. Two of the writers of this, Marcus and McFeely, wrote Winter Soldier, actually the
Mm.
entire Captain America trilogy, as well as the last 2
Oh.
Avengers movies. So they're
Oh
great
wow.
writers, but they weren't the only ones assigned to the project. So Alan Taylor comes in, and he wanted to give it a kind of dirtier vibe. He wanted to kind of lean into the Viking aspect a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so he has, a darker tone, darker color palette, and it's just a slightly different feel for this movie. We get to see more of Asgard, which I really like.
Hmm.
We got to kind of see the street level Asgard a little bit. We get more of Heimdall, Idris Elba in this one,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is cool. It starts with a great prologue, another prologue sequence with Bjor, who is Thor's grandfather, and his battle with
Right.
Malekith and the Dark Elves, which I think is a
Hmm.
really cool sequence. Another cool prologue that they start this one off with. And we, of course, jump from that into Thor's grand entrance on Vanaheim, where he's helping one of the Warriors Three, Hogun, defend his homeworld. Great entrance. Thor, the hammer comes through and he's battling all these guys. And
Yeah.
really, really great sequence. This movie, I'm not as big a fan of. I think
Hmm.
this movie has issues with its pacing. I feel is a little off in moments. I feel that the cast just aren't quite as locked in for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the director, the screenplay, what it is. I think Hemsworth and Hiddleston both have great chemistry still, and their stuff is the strongest in the movie. I think the development of their relationship, coming off of the death of Frigga, their mother, is a huge
Right.
emotional moment. She has that great funeral sequence, which looks beautiful, and the music in that sequence is really, really good, and
Yeah.
they hit the emotions right there. But I just don't feel that that's consistent throughout. Here we're getting the inverse. We're getting Jane now in Asgard, so she's the fish out of water, learning all this stuff about space and from Thor. I thought that was kind of clever, but not anything groundbreaking. I think the biggest weakness really is the plot, which I
Yeah.
feel is, leaning too much into, we got to set up the Infinity Stones and we got to set up all these things for the future of Marvel
Yeah.
instead of trying to make it a good Thor movie.
Sure.
Malekith, he's the most bland villain I think maybe Marvel's ever had. Honestly, I really, I
I'm
don't
kind
know
of glad
anything.
you said that. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know anything about the guy. I don't know what his
Yeah.
motivate. He just
Yeah.
wants to make everything dark for some
Uh-huh.
reason. I don't know.
Right.
I think if they had leaned into, he's getting revenge because Thor's grandfather banished him or something, if they had mentioned
Yeah.
that, that
Right.
could have
Right.
been maybe a little more compelling. And so this movie falls a little bit flat. I think the design of it is great. The effects are great. I
Hmm.
mentioned the music, cinematography, the technical aspects of the film are just really, really good, and
Yeah.
it's enjoyable to watch. I don't hate watching it. I just don't think it quite hits the high highs of that first Thor movie. For the reasons I gave. It has I'll mention a sequence that I really like is the final sequence where they're in London, but they're going through all the portals,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that scene is
Right.
really cool and a really unique action scene that I really liked. If we want to get in a little behind the scenes, maybe why the movie didn't work out as well, not just changing directors and all the writers, but Christopher Eccleston, who plays Malekith, the
Hmm.
villain, hated the makeup. He didn't realize that he was
Oh,
going to be in
really?
makeup for six
Oh
hours
boy.
every day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he really has been in interviews where he said that was one of the worst jobs I ever had because I just hated the makeup so
Okay.
much. It was
Okay.
too much. And so he's not having a good time on set. Natalie Portman
Interesting.
has said that she was so excited to work with Patty Jenkins on this
Oh,
movie that the disappointment of that really affected her experience on the movie, I guess.
she was
So
disappointed with the movie as well,
well,
or her experience
she
filming
didn't
it.
say that she was disappointed with the movie necessarily, but
Oh yeah.
she just has
Okay.
stated that she wanted to work with the other director and was excited about that. And when it
Yeah.
changed, she was kind of
Yeah.
not, I guess, as excited about it.
Yeah. Right. Okay,
Um,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Hemsworth himself has stated that he thinks his portrayal of Thor in this movie is not his best work.
Really?
Yeah, he's mentioned that in interviews, and that's why we'll talk about Ragnarok in a minute. That's why he wanted to go in such a different direction with Ragnarok,
Yeah.
is because he
Gotcha.
was kind of disappointed with. He felt it was just kind of more of the same, and he was kind of
Oh,
getting a little
okay.
tired of it. And again, three
Sure.
movies in a row. I mean, this is his third movie already as Thor. He's only been playing the character 2 years, and it was just a
Yeah.
lot.
Gotcha. Right.
So for all those reasons, I don't think it's quite as good as the first one. I don't mind watching it. It's just not one that I'm running back to very often. So what are your thoughts on The Dark World?
Okay. Yeah, I like where you're at on it. I will say, I think there's a lot of people that hate this movie or think it's just the worst Marvel movie or something like that. I don't get that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Because to me, this sequel to Thor is, I think it's as good as the first Thor, but
Okay.
there's things I like less and things I like more, which makes sense.
Sure.
I feel like the film has really great effects, really great action scenes, and the character development is what really gets me in this film. I think it was smart to move the plot onto Asgard because the less that takes place on Earth, the less they have to try to one up the Avengers film, or
True.
pay lip service to things that happened there,
Yep.
and constantly keep the plot in line with things that occurred on Earth.
Yeah.
Um,
Continuity. Yeah.
the brother to brother interplay, Thor and Loki, I think it's the best stuff that we get out of any film that Thor appears in. To me, I think this is Chris Hemsworth's best performance.
Oh, wow.
Because I just feel like Thor and Loki really get into their past and what they're
Yeah.
really at odds with. Like they have some really key scenes where they
Right.
actually get into discussions about that. I think it's
Yes,
when
they
they're
do.
traveling in particular. At one point, they
Yep.
sort of hash some things out. And
Yep.
then, of course, also in this theme, this movie, Thor has to deal with the death of his mother.
Right.
And so I feel like emotionally and character wise, this is the best film that we get for Thor.
Okay.
But look at what I'm comparing it to. I mean, the Avengers films, they don't take time.
Sure.
The next
Sure.
film we'll get into, but there is character stuff, but it's totally different than what we're
Right.
talking about leading up to this point.
Sure.
I also like the fact that in this film we actually get to see Loki fight. We don't really get to see a lot of that. We get to see him kind of use like a staff or something in Avengers 1, but here he's actually swinging and fighting and stuff like that. I don't really recall a lot of times we actually get to see that.
Right.
And that's kind of fun.
Yep.
You've got Thor fighting Algrim in this film, which is there's some really neat stuff they do with that, and it kind of reminded me of Neo versus Agent Smith in the Matrix at times.
Yeah,
the big final battle where they're every hit is so immense, and the person flies back 500 yards every time.
Yeah.
Some other things here. I also think that in Thor 2 here, Thor is just a lot more matured. Okay, so I want to get into some things I didn't like as much. The character Darcy, I feel like she got on my nerves a little bit in this film. I don't know why. I barely noticed her in the first film. I mean, I'm sure she's fine in that, but she was kind of annoying here. I don't know why. Let's see. Also,
they try to force the humor more in this one, whereas I felt the first one it was more natural.
Yes.
And here I think they just should have gone the darker route. I felt like they feel like, oh, it's a Marvel movie, we have to have some humor in there, so let's try to just make this the comic relief character and we'll just push all that on her. I would have rather they leaned into the darker story elements and just let it be.
I think that's part of it. It didn't really seem to line up with the rest of what was being laid down there. And you mentioned the fish out of water for Jane. She's not really given a lot to do in this movie.
She's not.
She's mostly just sort of reacting to this entity that has taken her over, and that's another thing too. So this ether just happens to be on Earth, and then the person that just happens to get embodied by it is Jane, and it just seems a little too coincidental.
Right. Well, she's transported to the planet, to the dark world where the ether is. Remember in the early in the movie, they find those portals in London, and she's transported there accidentally.
I probably forgot that.
It comes in. Right.
Gotcha.
But it is a little convenient. she essentially becomes the MacGuffin of the movie, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the final act on Earth, it just feels kind of rushed, and it's not really that impressive. And then you've got it's time sensitive, and for comedy, Loki has to take the subway to go down 3 stops. And
Thor does.
Would I say Loki? Yeah. Thor. And by the time he gets there, she's like, "Oh, if only we were here sooner." And she doesn't even mean it for comedy. It's like, well, if you wouldn't have taken the subway, maybe, or you know what I mean? Like, exactly. I don't know, some stuff like that I didn't really think was the smartest way to go. Yeah, I had a couple other little things I wanted to mention. Anything else you wanted to cover on?
I'll just echo that. I definitely agree with the Thor and Loki stuff. Again, I'll reiterate, it is really good in this movie, and it's really well written, well performed. I like where they end up at the end of this movie. It's really exciting to see, like you said, Thor's development. He says at the end of the movie, "I'd rather be a good man than a great king." And that's such a far cry from where he was at the beginning of the first Thor,
Yeah.
And so it's really well done. And then you, of course, it's revealed that Loki is on the throne. So that sets
Right.
up a great kind of twist ending and way
Yeah,
they can
yeah,
go in the next film. So I
that's
think
right.
there's definitely a lot of strengths to this film. Again, it's not a bad movie by any means, but yeah, that's where I am on it. I ended up, if you want to do ratings, I think I'm at 3 stars, maybe 3.5. I'm right in
Okay.
there, right in that range.
Okay.
Is where I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah, I want to ask you. I think the Bifrost is destroyed in the first Thor, right?
Correct.
So, and there's a reference to, that's the only way we can, have a portal to whatever, and,
Right.
and it's repaired in the second one, right? It's just
Yeah. So yeah,
just
in the
automatically repaired.
yeah, we forgot to mention that in Avengers. There's a line where Loki tells Thor, "How much dark energy did Odin have to muster to get you here?" So I guess Odin has another way of getting people places, but it's
Oh,
more difficult. And then yeah, in this movie, it has been a year, so it makes sense that they figured out a way to fix it. And there's actually, if you watch the scene, they mentioned it in the commentary where Heimdall is running to jump on the elf ship, the dark elf ship, when
yeah,
there's
that's
that
an
cool
awesome
action
moment.
sequence.
Yeah, yeah.
If you look behind him as he's running, there's like a little crack in the bridge where they've repaired it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. So
okay.
it's a little very quick detail, but it is there. It's like, yeah, we just built on from where we had it before.
Yeah, yeah. And there's another really good action scene where they're trying to leave the planet. There's all kinds of stuff that takes place when they're trying to exit the planet on various ships, and they're being chased. Right.
Yes.
That's a great
Yes.
action scene.
That is cool.
Um, I mentioned that road that almost reminded me of like the Wizard of Oz in some ways, but
Yeah.
it also reminds me of the Rainbow Road on Mario Kart. I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
played
sure.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, they call it in the comics, it's called the Rainbow Bridge.
Oh, there
In
you
the in
go.
the in the in
Yeah,
the films, they call it the Bifrost. I think they mentioned
yeah.
Rainbow Bridge in the first Thor movie, but yeah,
Gotcha.
it's called the Bifrost. But yeah, it's definitely very Mario Kart.
Yeah, and there's some other really cool stuff in this movie that again makes me like it a lot more, and that's
Hmm.
things like that horned creature, that Algrim. I had to look it up
Yeah,
to see what his name was. Yeah,
yeah.
he does that thing where it's like a weapon. He has something with his hands that like supercharges something, and he like
Oh
turns into
yeah,
fire,
yeah.
and then you know what I mean,
Right.
and then there's those really cool grenades that you throw, and it sort of becomes a
Yes.
bubble and like swallows the person.
Right.
Those are
Right.
really great ideas,
They are cool ideas. They had a lot of cool ideas, and the design again of the elf ships. The big arc, and then the little.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they called them harrows. The little tiny like
Uh,
knife looking ones that zoom through
oh
Asgard, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
those are just cool looking. It's such
Yeah,
a cool idea.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I think there was one other quick thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if you've ever seen Austin Powers, but when Dr. Selvig, right?
Yeah.
That's still on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Skarsgård.
yeah.
Yep.
So when yeah, Dr. Selvig is getting out of jail, they're bailing him out of jail, and they have him sign for his belongings.
Okay.
And the guy takes them out one by one. He's like one wallet brown, and then he's like one key ring. It reminded me exactly of that scene in Austin Powers when he wakes up after the deep freeze, and
Oh,
they
right.
produce all these items they had set aside. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
maybe that was way out of left field,
Yeah.
but it totally
Yeah, that's
reminds me
good.
of
No,
that
there's
scene.
a similar scene in the Blues Brothers, which is one of my favorite movies,
Oh
where they
no,
do that.
really?
They do that
Maybe
too.
that's
Yeah.
the original then,
Could
where
be.
they do that.
Yeah, yeah. That is a funny moment though. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also I totally identify with Dr. Selvig's able to think better without pants. That makes perfect sense.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
guess I better put on my pants.
And of
That's a
all
good
people
one.
to be sort of the comic relief, it's funny that he would be it.
Yes, and they're continuing the whole thing from Avengers where Loki was in his head and he's kind of gone crazy.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
that was well done.
I'm probably
Um,
I'm probably again at 3.5
okay.
stars, maybe 4 on
Okay.
this one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. All right, let's jump into Avengers Age of Ultron. This movie was released May 1st, 2015, runtime of 2 hours and 21 minutes, budget of 365 million, grossed 1.4 billion. I like it better than the first Avengers movie. A lot of people don't. I think it's really cool. It's a really interesting film. I like James Spader a lot as Ultron. I like the cast. I like what they do with the story. The action is incredible, and effects are amazing. But Thor gets the short end of the stick here. Thor really has nothing to do this whole movie. I don't know what happened, if they just decided he's too powerful. We got to write him a side quest where he can't, he has to go this other direction. But I mean, it's kind of sad, honestly, from a Thor perspective. Again,
Yeah,
he's used well in
right.
that opening battle. That's a cool scene, and he's used well at the end and fighting all the robots. But
Yeah, yeah,
in the middle of this story, he just goes off on this weird side
yeah. He
quest where
just
he
takes
has to,
off. Yeah,
yeah, he
right.
takes off. He finds Selvig. They go to this hot tub and they have this.
He's gone for.
Yes,
I looked it up. He's gone for 34 minutes of runtime. You
wow,
don't see him in that film, and it's a like
wow.
a 2 hour movie, right? But 2.5, something like that. But
Yeah, 221. So yeah,
yeah,
that's still a lot of time for a main character to be gone. There's no real development here for him, I don't think
hmm
at all.
yeah,
He's really just there for plot reasons. And again,
and because he
setting
has to
up
be.
setting up Infinity War, setting up Thanos and the
Yeah,
Infinity
yeah,
Stones. And
right.
there's the cool sequence with Scarlet Witch gets into his head and he has that apocalyptic vision of Asgard, being
Yeah,
destroyed. And
speaking of
um,
that, I want to tell you that exact moment when she gets in his head. What she says to him is, "See where your power leads." Is I
mm,
think she says that to him, and it
mhm,
flashes all these images.
yeah,
And I went back and I paused it because I saw I couldn't really tell what I was seeing because it's so quick that they flip through the images,
right.
And one of the images, when I paused it, it shows 4 Infinity Stones, just side by side, and then
Mm.
it flips to a close up of Vision's face, and
Oh,
Vision had not yet appeared in the film at that
right,
point,
right,
which is
right.
interesting. So,
That is
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. So he definitely ties into Vision. He helps create Vision
yeah,
because of this vision he had. That's why Vision is called Vision. So that's a cool moment. He has cool moments in this movie. He's not there most of the movie, and what he's doing is just not compelling enough or interesting enough. I mean, you could have cut out all his scenes in the middle and just had him show up with Vision at the end, and I would have been fine. I mean, I don't just those other scenes just aren't necessary to me.
and we've talked about this film before. I think it's a great film. The first action scene is a little bit not great technically with the CGI,
Yeah.
but there are some good moments here.
Mhm.
I find interesting that in this film he gives orders to Captain America.
Mm.
I can't remember if that's a flashback to something else in the first Avengers film, but Captain
Okay.
America just totally takes orders
Mm.
from the direction he's given, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And then he also teams up with Captain America for some combos when they're fighting,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
fun.
That is cool.
And then there is another fun scene in this film involving Thor, where each Avenger's trying to lift his hammer. I
Yeah,
forgot
that
the
is
name of it
fun.
already. Whatever
Right.
that hammer's called.
Mjolnir.
And
Yep.
yeah, okay. And I'm never gonna remember that. What's interesting is that Captain America can't lift it, but later he does. So
If you notice, if you look really
was he
close, he
faking?
budges it. It goes
Okay,
like
so he
that,
wasn't
really
faking.
quick. I don't I don't know. There's debate about
Yeah.
this
Oh,
of
okay.
whether
Okay. Okay.
he was just kind of being nice to Thor and not
That's
actually
what I
lifting
wondered.
it,
Yeah.
or
Right.
what.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it does. If you look really close, there's like it barely moves when Cap
Yeah.
touches it, but
Yes. Right.
he doesn't
Right.
lift it all the way.
Yeah. And so Thor, yeah, he's not given much time here. Often though, he's the grounded center in this film. Interestingly
Hmm.
enough,
Yeah,
and then there are definitely times where he's sort of the butt of the joke.
sure.
But I agree with everything that you said. Otherwise on this, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll just move right along. Now, what's interesting about after Age of Ultron is that they ended up doing a couple of short films. So when they hired on the new director who's going to take the reins on the Thor franchise moving forward, Taika Waititi, who's a New Zealand director, has become very popular recently. A lot of good movies that he's made. He decided to kind of test out before we get started shooting on the third Thor movie. Let's make a couple of short films, just Chris Hemsworth and a couple of other actors.
Yeah. Hold on
And
a quick sec though,
sure,
Cam.
go ahead.
That's the guy that plays the rock guy.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
because I
Yes,
had to look the guy's name up, and I'm
yep.
like Taika Waititi. That's
Taika
that guy.
Waititi. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's Korg. Yep,
he's funny. Yeah,
he is funny. He's an
in those
actor. Yeah,
movies.
he
We'll,
he's
we'll
he's
get to
acted
that,
in
but
many different films,
yeah,
and
okay. So he's a
and
director too, huh?
he is. Yep, yep. He's a director and a writer. So yeah, so he decided to make these short films. They're called Team Thor. There's two of them,
Are they
and
animated?
they're not. They're live action. It's Chris
Oh,
Hemsworth right there,
oh,
and
really?
it's just really small scale. I mean, they
Yeah.
literally shot it as they were in pre-production on Ragnarok,
Okay.
and they're
Huh.
pretty short. But it's just basically him on Earth. A lot of fans were asking, during Captain America Civil War, where was Thor? What was he doing? This kind of tells you what he was up to. He was having his own, little domestic adventures. It's fun. They're
Okay.
funny. They're
I got to
funny
check
and,
that
and,
out.
and enjoyable. It's very Taika Waititi's sense of humor, so if you enjoy that, you'll like it for sure. So we did two of those, Team Thor Part Two, and then they jumped into Ragnarok. So Ragnarok was released November 3rd, 2017. So quite a gap between the second Thor movie and of Age of Ultron, 2 years after that, and the release of
Hmm.
this. Runtime of 2 hours and 10 minutes, budget of 180 million, grossed $854 million. So up
Wow.
to this point, the biggest Thor movie yet. Taika Waititi's brought in. He's kind of an exciting up and coming director. He's directed, I think, 8 movies now, including Love and Thunder. I highly recommend all
Okay.
of them. I've seen all of his
Okay.
movies except I think for one, Hunt for the Wilder People, Jojo Rabbit, What We Do in the Shadows,
Oh, I've
Boy.
heard of that. Oh,
All
I
of
watched
these.
Boy. He directed
Oh,
Boy.
yeah.
It's a horror
Boy,
movie, right?
Boy. No. Boy. It's a New Zealand film. It's one of his first
Wait,
movies.
that's not the film about the puppet that
No,
oh, what's that
no.
movie? That's a really good movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's called Boy also, and it's
Okay. It
about
might be.
a family that I think their son dies, and so they replace him with a puppet
Oh,
or something
interesting.
like that. Anyway, I'll look that
Okay.
up and we'll circle back maybe in a few
Okay.
weeks or something.
Cool. Yeah. No, Boy is a New Zealand movie. It's kind of semi autobiographical film about his life when
Oh,
he was younger.
okay.
Um, it's good. It's good. You should check it out. But he's known for his very quirky sensibilities. He's
Yeah,
uh
yeah.
he's a very funny guy. I mean, just naturally.
Mm.
Listening to the commentary on Ragnarok is just a riot. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
him, and it is
Oh,
hysterical
okay.
from beginning to end. So if you can check out the commentary on that, I highly recommend it. His kind of whole idea with this movie was, Hemsworth was kind of getting bored of the character, and Waititi was like, "Well, let's just destroy everything that Thor is and rebuild it basically from the ground up." It's essentially a
Right.
reboot. I mean, really, it's kind of what's called in the industry a soft reboot,
Oh,
where they're
okay.
not
Gotcha.
actually fully rebooting the series and recasting everyone, but
Right.
tonally, it's
Hmm.
very different from what came before.
Yeah.
Much more comic booky, silly, cartoony, kind of brighter colors, and more CGI, and very, very, very different from what we've had before. I think he does a great job with it. I mean, like I said, it's very different. It's not my favorite Thor. Again, the first one I think is still my favorite Thor movie.
Mm.
What they did there. But this is tons of fun. I mean, I don't see how you can watch this movie and not have a smile on your face when you're watching it. There's just so many just interesting worlds that we visit and characters we're introduced to. It has a very 80s vibe to it. The synthy score, I think, has a lot to do with that. And again, just the use of color, and it very much feels like, if anyone listening is familiar with the work of Jack Kirby, who's an artist, comic book artist, who helped Stanley create Thor, it very much is an ode to his style, especially when they're on the planet Sakaar. They
Is that the
the
trash
whole
planet?
the trash planet, yeah.
Okay.
The whole
Yeah.
design of that whole planet, the architecture, the colors, the design is very Jack Kirby. And so
Okay.
comic book fans get a big kick out of this one for that reason. Um, has a great little opening sequence where Thor's kind of, you think he's narrating to the audience. He's talking to the skeleton he's in this prison with. And we get the great Clancy Brown as Surtur, the big demon character, the lava creature. And he does a great job in that role. Taika Waititi did the motion capture for that character as well. So yeah, he did a lot in this movie. And then of course he played Korg, as we mentioned, who's a really, really funny, silly character that I really enjoy. We get a lot of good stuff here. It's not an all out comedy. I think sometimes the comedy in this can overshadow the more emotional moments, but I think what they did with Odin's death was really good. I think that's an effective scene that Thor and Loki both get to have
Hmm.
together, which I think
Yeah.
works quite well. We have Kate Blanchett as the villain Hela, who I think was a good addition. I think she does a pretty good job in that role. Tessa Thompson is a new character, Valkyrie, who I really liked
Hmm.
also. And so we get a lot of new characters. Jeff Goldblum is in here as the Grand Master, doing his Jeff Goldblum thing, just that he does now, which I think is good. And then, of course, Hulk is a main character here. And Hulk has been one of my favorite comic book characters for a long time. I like the dual nature of Banner and Hulk and that whole Jekyll and Hyde thing.
Hmm.
And they play into that a little bit. He's mostly Hulk throughout the movie, but we do get a good bit of Ruffalo in there as well, and I think he does a good job as Banner in this too.
Well, and you definitely hear
Um,
his voice acting coming through when he's
yeah,
Hulk, thankfully.
yeah, and he's not just voice acting; he's motion capture.
Motion
He's
capture,
on
yeah.
set throughout the entire production, which helps a lot.
And the
And
CGI has gotten better since Avengers for sure.
it
You know,
really has. It
because
really
it's
has
hard to
improved.
pull that off with that complex of a situation going on.
Definitely, definitely. So,
And the weight of the character, the gravity, that kind of stuff is so
yep.
much better now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree. And they utilize his character well. This is loosely based on a comic book called, well, the Ragnarok comics obviously has to do with that side of things, but also a comic book, one of my favorites called Planet Hulk, which
Hmm.
is a Hulk centric comic about him being transported to this planet where he becomes this gladiator champion. I liked those aspects of it. We get some great action sequences, with Hulk fighting Thor. That's a great arena match that they have. The final battle on the Bifrost on the bridge is so cool when
That's
Thor
amazing.
finally
Yeah, yeah.
unleashes his power, and we get Valkyrie there fully suited up. We get Hulk, we
Hmm.
get Loki back, Heimdall's there,
Yeah,
and it's just
yeah.
a really really effective sequence.
It's a
And
great ending to that movie.
definitely,
I
definitely,
think the
I
best ending we get out of the three Thor films, in my opinion.
probably is.
Action
It's
wise, I should say. Yeah.
sure, absolutely, I would agree with that. We get a great use of soundtrack with the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin is played in the beginning of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
movie
right.
and then again at the end, and I think
And of
it's
course, this
really
was used in Wonder Woman.
was it.
The theme it was reworked by Hans Zimmer in Wonder Woman.
Oh,
And then where
interesting, I did not
else?
know that.
Yeah, if you think about those notes
Right,
when you
no, that
watch
makes
Wonder Woman, it's
sense.
the same kind of
Yeah,
it's the same notes basically.
okay,
And
okay.
then there was another place it was used too, and I forget. If I think of it, I'll mention it again.
Yeah, well, Marvel has
Yeah.
become known for kind of some of their needle drops, especially, of course, the Guardians movies are all very soundtrack heavy, and they do that a lot. But this is one of the best. It definitely, even the lyrics fit right in. Hammer of the Gods. It talks about all
Mhm.
that, so it's pretty cool, and they use it just at the right moments. So all in all, a movie I thoroughly enjoy, and I think maybe it's a little too comedic. It maybe changes the tone a little too much, and as the Marvel movies go on, one of my complaints is they overuse CGI a little bit.
Mm.
I mean, it gets better, but I still think you need some real sets. I can tell a lot of this is just fully digital environments that it loses some of the weight and sense of reality to it. But again, this one's it kind of fits the tone because it's leaning into that more comic booky, again, cartoony kind of feel and vibe.
Hmm.
And then, the ending of this movie is great. We got King Thor finally. He's on the throne. Asgard's destroyed, but
Yeah.
and we know where it leads in Infinity War. But for a
Yeah.
moment, he has his kingly moment at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
he's even got the eye patch too, which is a
Right.
cool thing. So, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on Ragnarok?
Yeah, a lot of the same thoughts. However, for me, I do feel like this is an outright comedy.
Yeah,
I think pretty much right from the beginning, I mean, everybody realizes that it's a completely different kind of movie. But to
sure.
me, it's just comedy from start to finish. You just kind of
Yeah,
any thoughts you had of like some kind of serious, actual serious science fiction or serious dramatic film are
right.
just are pretty much missing here. I mean, not that it
Sure.
doesn't have a couple moments.
Yeah,
I really like the sort of synthesized 80s score that kicks in a lot of the time,
yeah,
which is just it's just fun, and
right.
the bright and colorful. throughout. I mean,
Yep.
it's super bright and colorful.
It is.
I will say that sometimes there's a danger of it coming across a bit too TV showish.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
fortunately, just when I feel like it's starting to feel that way, it doesn't. And I think the movie wanders a little bit. There's times where I'm like, where's this going exactly? I wanted to mention too, obviously, I'm not going to repeat all the comedy in the film, but there's one moment too that just perfectly exemplifies the silliness that's going on here because it's
Yeah.
just silly at times.
Sure.
And that
Sure.
is when they're giving Thor sort of the tour about where he is and what's going on. I think the Grand Master is walking him through this. And we've
Yeah.
got Thor going through, it's almost like, well, it does literally sort of recreate the boat ride from Willy Wonka, you know,
Yes.
with
Taika mentioned that in his commentary.
oh, really? Yeah, they
Yeah.
use the same music, you know, and
Right.
and sorta, and with the it's kind of a scary thing actually at the same time, but
Right.
totally played for laughs
Yeah.
in this film, and that's just a perfect example of the silliness that's going on
Yes.
here.
Yes.
When you start making references like that to to pop culture, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, this is just a terrific comedy.
Yeah.
That's what I would describe it as.
Right.
I get so many laughs out of this film. I'm gonna again, I haven't done the reviews for these, but I'm gonna go ahead and say I probably would rate this slightly above the first two.
Okay.
They're just different, almost different genres,
Yeah.
really. Entertainment wise, I probably get more out of this just because I'm just laughing throughout, and
Sure.
I just appreciate
Yeah.
the good acting that leads to the comedic bits and the laugh out loud
Right.
moments. Valkyrie is also really good,
Yeah.
really good character here.
Hmm.
Jeff Goldblum, I almost wonder if they just told him, just, you know, here's kind of where we're going with the plot. Just say whatever comes to your mind.
Right. That's what it
You know,
seems
because,
like.
yeah, yeah, because there's really not a lot of substance there. It's just him
Right.
sort of just talking and riffing on things.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's not even like a real bad guy, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. He's
Um,
he's kind of a villain, but he's not really because you kind of like him. He's kind of just silly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then one of the best scenes in the film, again, it's comedy. It's when Thor gets back to his planet and he's watching actors recreate Thor and Loki. And isn't it? I didn't look it up, but is it Matt Damon and Brad Pitt playing Thor and Loki?
No, that's actually Chris Hemsworth's brother, Luke Hemsworth. His older brother is playing
Really?
Thor in that scene, and Matt Damon is Loki.
Oh, it
And
is
then
Matt
of course,
Damon though.
and then of course, Sam Neill from Jurassic Park is Odin.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. He's a New Zealand actor. Taika Waititi knows him. He was in his movie Hunt for the Wilder People.
Oh wow, that is strange. Because what I was going to
Yeah.
say is that I thought it was Anthony Hopkins, and I thought he did look a little bit younger.
Yeah,
But
right.
I thought, but either way, no matter who it
Well,
is,
Anthony Hopkins is in the scene as Odin, but Loki disguised as Odin, right? But you're talking about the
yes.
play. In the play that Odin is watching, there is an actor that comes out as Odin at the
Oh, and
very
that's
end,
Sam Neill.
and that's Sam Neill. Yeah,
Okay, but the person who's watching that Loki is impersonating,
right. That is Anthony Hopkins. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because what's hilarious to me is that you've got things that Loki would say, and
Yeah.
you're picturing Loki, but at a certain point, I'm like, wait a minute, that's Anthony Hopkins impersonating
Tom
Loki.
Hiddleston as Loki,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. And the things that are coming out of his mouth are hilarious.
Yeah, they're great.
And so that was one of the greatest moments, I thought, but I didn't realize that Sam Neill was
Yeah.
the other.
The
I
other
got you on
Odin.
that there.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
Odin, yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's fantastic. And then of course Idris Elba once again is tremendous in every scene he's in. I just want more of him and his character.
I agree. Yeah, I give this one 4 stars. I like it a lot.
I think I'm right there too. 4 stars.
Yeah, it's a good one. I have a lot of fun with it. All right, so that's it for Ragnarok. Such a fun movie. Really, really cool. They really realized, I think, how good Chris Hemsworth was at comedy, and that's why they leaned into that so
Exactly.
much. And he just does a
Yeah.
great job in it. So
And clearly that's what he wanted to do too. And he
Yeah.
probably has more fun on set, I would guess.
absolutely, you can tell it just comes through his
Yeah,
performance
yeah.
in that one. So now we're shifting over to Avengers: Infinity War. So this was the next film, came out just actually a few months later, April 2018. Runtime of 2 hours 29 minutes, budget of $400 million.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's the budget. Ended up grossing $2.04 billion. So one of the biggest movies of all time.
Yeah.
We've talked about this on a previous podcast. As we went through our top 5 films, we kind of went into in depth on Infinity War, but here we're just going to focus on Thor's journey, which is one of the strongest elements of the movie. I think that this film does a great job with. It's interesting to compare this Thor side quest to Thor's side quest in Age of Ultron. This one is very effective, very emotional. Of course, you have, the Russo brothers coming in and they're handling Thor for the first time. And they
Yeah.
very much wanted to honor what Taika Waititi had done and what they did in Ragnarok. And so they really, I think, blend that more comedic kind of tone for Thor with the more dramatic side that we got in his earlier movies. And it makes for maybe the best Thor stuff we've ever had. It's really effective. I mean, the movie starts with him, right? It starts back on the ship.
Yeah, it's
He's
very
king,
grim.
and it's triumphant at the end of
Oh, well,
Ragnarok.
that part's yeah, that
Right,
part's
but
good.
then right, as soon as we dive into this movie,
Yeah,
we see the devastation that's occurred as
yeah,
Thanos
we're
is
a long way
attacked.
from the end of Ragnarok at that
Right,
point. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so, interesting little Easter egg. Kenneth Branagh, director of the first Thor, is
Mhm.
the voice of the Asgardian who is sending out
Oh,
the distress signal.
at
You
the very
hear
beginning.
you
Hmm.
hear over the
Yeah.
credits. Yeah, pretty
Oh,
cool
wow.
that they did that. Thor is beaten, suffered so much loss just at the beginning of this movie. I mean, Heimdall is gone, Hulk is sent away, and his brother is killed
Yeah,
before his
yeah.
eyes. So it's a really
Right.
he's brought low, lower than ever before. He's on this
And the
revenge mission.
and to see two major characters from all those Thor movies
Yeah,
be apparently taken out by
right,
Thanos is a great way to tell us how serious that
right.
Thanos is.
Yes, the stakes are high in
Yeah,
Infinity
yeah,
War, and they do that through both Heimdall and Loki, and it's
right.
really, really effective. So, like I said, he's on a revenge mission. This whole movie, he's left for dead. Guardians pick him up, and they have some fun moments. We get a lot more comedy with them and interacting with Chris Pratt as Star Lord. They have so many great interactions. Star Lord trying to imitate his voice and
Oh, I know.
the whole thing.
And again, Thor is there's so much comedy from what he says, but he's basically a straight man. He's pretty much
Yeah,
not intending any of it to be comedy.
right, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, almost never is he intending it to be his character intending it to be funny, but it's
right.
so funny.
It is. It is great. It is great. And one thing we didn't mention about Ragnarok is it kind of makes sense that Thor has a little more of a sense of humor because he spent between movies so much time on Earth. And that's a little bit of what those short films cover and kind of
Oh,
remind us of, oh, yeah, since Age of Ultron, he's been
okay.
on Earth. So he's kind of up to date with some pop culture references. Like I think they say he's talking to the Guardians about the Avengers. We're Earth's mightiest heroes, and I think it's Mantis that asks, "Is like Kevin Bacon heroes like Kevin Bacon?"
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, he might be on the theme team now. I don't know." It's a great moment. So
Yeah.
they have good interaction there. He goes off with Rocket and Groot to
Hmm.
forge a new weapon that can
Yeah.
kill Thanos, and so he goes and meets Eitri, played by Peter Dinklage, who I think is good in the
Yeah.
movie as well. I like that they
And he's
made
a
the
little person,
dwarfs
but he's
giants, right? Yeah,
gigantic. Yeah,
it's
that's
great.
fascinating.
It's
Yeah.
great. It's so good. He goes through a lot there, and has to hold open this
Yeah.
contraption to
Yeah.
to make the forge work and everything, and it's a really exciting sequence. I thought they did a good job with that. And of course, he gets his weapon, Stormbreaker, and he has that triumphant entry in Wakanda as the Avengers theme swells and,
Yeah. Yeah.
bring me Thanos. And he, goes
Yeah.
into battle. It's just a great moment. One
It
of the best
is.
moments. I remember the theater just erupting when that
Yeah.
happened, when I saw it. So all in all, I really enjoy his stuff here. He has some, emotional discussion here with Rocket as they're on their way to create Stormbreaker. And he talks about the loss he's experienced and, how he's just, trying to focus on, getting revenge. And that's kind of his mission. And Rocket kind of talks to him about, how, you've been through a lot. You kind of need to, take it easy or whatever. And the end of this movie, it ends with him getting his revenge, but at a great cost. He could have gone for the head,
Yep.
and he didn't. He wanted to savor his revenge, and because of that, Thanos was able to snap his
Little
fingers
snap. Yeah.
and it ended half the universe. So he deals with the fallout of that, obviously, in the next film. But what are your thoughts on his journey in Infinity War?
Yeah, well, it makes perfect sense that with the humor that we got from Ragnarok, that Thor would end up with Guardians because they're a
Yeah.
raucous bunch,
Yeah, and he's in space too, so
hilarious.
that also makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and how much I enjoy Infinity War. I was
Yeah.
awfully worried though that bringing the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, which I knew little about, but I
Yeah.
knew what they were and that kind of thing, and I thought
Sure.
that would probably ruin. I had low expectations when I saw
Sure.
Infinity War, and I
Sure.
think it's those more serious moments sometimes, like you mentioned with Rocket and
Yeah.
Thor, that started to change my thoughts about accepting them into the fold a little
Yeah.
bit.
Right.
And
Right.
by the end, I was fine with it.
Yeah.
Without getting into too much detail, it's amazing. I mean, the writing is has got to be pretty brilliant to pull off the kind of grim stuff you have at the very beginning with
Yeah.
Thanos and Loki and Thor and all that,
Right.
and then comedy throughout, and
Yeah.
then really, really serious at the
Yeah.
end. That's
Right.
that's not easy to do.
No.
And it's great acting, it's great writing, great
Right.
directing.
Yep.
Anyway, I've said a lot about this movie already,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, he has some good moments in this film for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, really
A
like
lot of
his
funny
journey.
moments, a lot of serious moments. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's very well balanced, and it's just a great journey we go on with
Mhm.
him. It's a pretty pivotal moment for him. All right, so we'll move right into Avengers Endgame, released April 26, 2019, runtime of 3 hours and 1 minute. Had a budget also of $400 million, ended up grossing $2.7 billion
Wow.
worldwide. Incredible. Russo brothers, of course, back to direct this one, shot it back to back with Infinity War. And here we pick up with Thor dealing with the fallout of his actions in Infinity War. He has become extremely depressed, feels so much guilt. He's really just wasting his days away, drinking, playing video games, overeating. He's
Mhm.
just a slob, basically. But of course, Destiny calls. Rocket and Hulk come to recruit him for this mission to go back in time and save everyone they lost. So this movie, I think, does even more than Infinity War as far as developing him as a character after what he went through in that movie, and where we end up with him here is really interesting. It has also that great opening scene of him, chopping Thanos' head off.
Yeah, he
That
finally
time,
gets them,
I
sort
went
of.
went for the head. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that moment, once they realize that the stones are gone, they can't use
Yeah.
them to bring everyone back. He just lashes out,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great moment for him. But throughout this movie, we get this all these different storylines of all these characters going into different timelines of the MCU,
Right.
moments that we've already
Right.
seen that we get to revisit, recontextualize. And I think this movie greatly enhances the Dark World for me. It really does a lot to enhance that movie as far as Thor's relationship with his mother. He gets to have
Yeah.
closure with her finally, which is really important for him. And Rene Russo is great in their scenes together. And I like also what they did. This is the first time we see New Asgard, which is the Asgardians of now living on Earth in Norway, this little seaside village they have, which I thought was
Yeah.
a cool little thing that they put in there. Hemsworth is great here. He's great. He has, again, the comedy, when he's explaining what the ether is to the whole
Yeah.
Avengers group, and he gets them to, and Jane, she's an ex flame of mine, and it gets the whole thing. It's just, and they're all kind of just looking at him, going, "What's going on?" It's just a great moment they have there.
Yeah.
So I really like it. I really like his acting here. He's acting under all this prosthetics, the fat suit, the
Mhm.
beard, this big bushy beard he has now, the super long hair, and his
which
performance
makes him
comes
look more
through.
like Odin, by the way, I think,
It does.
Yeah.
Especially, I love at the end when
Mhm.
he gets Stormbreaker, and the suit is on, and the beard is braided now, and he just has such a very Viking,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
Odin look, which I thought was cool.
right.
And great moments there fighting Thanos alongside Iron Man and Cap, the way they use their powers together and everything, and of course Cap lifting Mjolnir. I knew it, which was a great moment too. So yeah, I like it. All in all, it's a really effective movie, and I really like that he's kind of gets redemption a little bit here. He's kind of restored and realizes he has that moment with his mother where he reaches his hand out and Mjolnir comes to him. I'm still worthy. That's a great moment too. So, what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
his journey in Endgame?
Yeah, when he defeats Thanos and kind of sort of rushes to end him like that near the beginning, Thor has a lot of really great characteristics. Nobleness.
Yeah,
He's always trying to do the right thing
yeah,
and save his people. But he does
hmm
have some impulsiveness.
sure.
And when he chops off Thanos's head, it reminded me of in Age of Ultron when the first version of Ultron makes an appearance, and Thanos kind of rushes to take him out like that.
Thor, yeah,
Thor does.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry.
right.
And I think at the same time the Avengers are like, why did you do that so suddenly? I mean, I think they say
Right.
something like that.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
reminded me of that moment. So I mean, he's not perfect. He definitely has his flaws.
right,
And even on the journey that he's been through, he still has this moment of impulsivity.
right.
But I don't know what it would have saved to not do that at that moment. But
Yeah,
um, and then his I don't know that I like chubby Thor. I feel like it's kind of a it kind of cheapens sort of. I mean, I get that it's for humor, but I don't know if that's the best
sure.
way to go.
Right.
Um, uh, and then the scene with his it's sort of an extended scene with his mother, which is great. Everybody kind
Mm,
of wishes they could have a family member back and have that kind of closure. And the fact that you kind of wonder, like, does she know that she's got to know this isn't the Thor that she just saw 10 minutes ago? And
yeah,
she figures it out without him having to say, I'm not the action.
right,
I like the
right.
fact that she acknowledges that too, and she just kind of goes with it.
Yes.
The big fight is great in this film. Obviously, Captain America can now wield that Thor's hammer, whatever it's called there.
Yeah.
And so there's some really good stuff in this film as well from Thor. Thankfully, I will say at the end of the film, it ends with him riding along with the Guardians. So I can't help but wonder, is he in Guardians 3?
We might have an answer to that in Love and Thunder.
Oh, well, that's a good point. Hey, one more thing I wanted to mention about
Sure.
this. When in that big action scene, Thanos, we thought he was gone, but now they traveled back in time and brought him forward. And so now there's this big battle again, almost just like what happened with New York and the first Avengers. And
Sure.
I kind of, I don't know, I feel like I pick up a little bit on Thor and other characters looking at this army that they already defeated in
Yeah.
their
Right.
mind
Right.
back in the first Avengers film,
Yeah.
but now they're having to fight the same people again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing they throw in there. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty. I mean, obviously this is a great film,
Yeah.
and I'll let you talk about Love and Thunder at some point here. But
Sure.
yeah, great, solid appearance, great film.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, Endgame is very high on my rankings, as
Mhm.
is Infinity War. So yeah, really like his role there. It brought, I thought, good closure to what we had seen up into that point. And like you said, at the end, he's with the Guardians. What's going to happen there sets up a kind of interesting way to go forward. Yeah, all in all, I really enjoy that one too. So now we're at Thor: Love and Thunder. This film was just released July 8th, 2022. Runtime of an hour and 59 minutes. Budget of 250 million. Big budget. So far to date, we're recording this on Sunday. This weekend, it has grossed 143 million domestically, making it the biggest Thor opening worldwide. It's already at 302 million. So
Wow.
a big hit, another big hit Marvel has on their hands here. And Taika Waititi returns to direct this film,
Mm.
and it very much has his style back, and it's very
It's
funny,
colorful and all that. I haven't
very
watched a trailer
colorful.
for it. Yeah,
Oh, really? Okay.
I try not
Um,
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I'm not going to give away too much here. I want you to be surprised when you see it in the theater. But yeah, very colorful, very funny, goofy, weird, silly stuff. You know,
So
he
similar
injects into
to
it.
Ragnarok then
Very
in
similar to
tone.
Ragnarok
Okay,
in
good.
tone.
Good.
I felt this film had a better balance
Mm.
of the more dramatic elements.
Okay.
I felt those landed a little bit better than they did in Ragnarok. But yeah, it very much still has his style. Maybe again overusing CGI, which is
Mm.
another thing. But some good action sequences. I don't know if the action was quite as good as Ragnarok, but there were certainly some sequences that stood out. The Guardians do play a role here. I will say that.
Okay.
That the Guardians are here. We
That would
pick
only
up
make
right,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
we pick up right where we left off with
Oh, okay.
Endgame.
Okay.
So they're there in the movie. Valkyrie returns. We also get more Korg in this movie. So if you like
Good.
Taika
Good.
Waititi in that role, we get a lot more of him. Some cool surprise cameos I won't get into. I will say, just because this is in the trailer, Natalie Portman is back as Jane Foster,
Mm.
and they give
Okay.
her a great storyline. She's one
Oh.
of the highlights of the movie. I thought they did a great job with her. Another actor who is in the trailers, who's the main villain of the film, Christian Bale, is playing a character named Gore, and
Okay.
he is the standout of the film. I mean, he, as we know, is a phenomenal actor, and this is no exception. His role here is really an important one, and it's Christian Bale, unlike I've ever seen him. Very
Wow.
unique character, very menacing, but just
Okay.
great character. He has a great story in this
Okay.
movie, and is
So they
another
do,
major highlight.
they develop the villain unlike with Jeff Goldblum's character, huh?
Exactly. Yes. Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Yes. Yes.
Good.
The
I would
villain.
doubt Christian Bale would take it if there wasn't some scenery to chew.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. He
Yeah.
does a phenomenal job in it. Has a very satisfying ending. I think this is a really well done film. It's well paced. Like I said, it's a pretty. I mean, it's right under 2 hours, so a good runtime on it. They don't waste any time with anything. So I enjoyed it greatly. I gave it 3.5 stars right now is where I'm at, and so we'll see if that goes up or down on rewatch. But really solid movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. All right, so that is it for our Thor in the MCU recap episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Bert, did you have anything to add?
Nope, that's it. It's been a very fun marathon of Thor.
Yeah, it's definitely been fun. I enjoyed going back through those and seeing Love and Thunder. If you've seen the new movie, let us know in the comments. Go ahead and rank the Thor movies in the comments below as well. Let us know your ranking of the Thor movies in the MCU. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to, again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you'll get notifications of all our videos here on The Real World. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.